Sorry to interrupt all the nice conversations and breakfast enjoyment. Time to get started. We have one guest today who is our guest speaker, Mary Burns. We look forward to hearing from her. And we're going to start with a Rotary Minute from Chris.
Scoot up here so I can see everybody. Good morning. Wasn't it a beautiful drive in? Yeah, it was gorgeous. It was perfect for my day. So today is September 21st, and it's International Day of Peace, the International Day of Peace. The United Nations declared this a day devoted to strengthening the ideals of peace through observing 24 hours of nonviolence and ceasefire. Rotary, as you know, is a leading organization in the promotion of peace through education and practical solutions to global problems and issues. What I didn't know is that Rotary has worked with the United Nations beginning in 1945, when it first started in 1945, and Rotary played an essential role in building support during the formative years of the UN. It's a fascinating history. I mean, it's a presentation about Rotary's involvement with the UN, but in recognition of Rotary's efforts to foster goodwill and peace across national boundaries, Rotary received a consultative status and was given a seat in the General Assembly of the United Nations. That I didn't know. And that happened in 1946. Today, Rotary holds the highest consultative status offered to a non-government organization. In this capacity, Rotary International and the UN have built strong and productive partnership, including work to eradicate polio, which we know is been very successful, cultural exchanges, literacy, education, water sanitation projects, and peace conferences all around the world. It makes sense, right? I mean, when you think about the kind of organization that Rotary is, what Rotary brings to the table is a global network of volunteer leaders who have dedicated their time and talent to tackle some of the world's most pressing problems and humanitarian challenges. Rotary connects 1.2 million members from more than 200 countries and geographic areas. Our work in partnership with the United Nations has had and will continue to have a huge impact on the international level. What I want to end with today, because I really hadn't thought about the peace initiative, I spent a lot of time at a Quaker college, 16 years. My husband and I worked in a Quaker college, so I was very acquainted with peace initiatives that Quakers were involved with. But I didn't know how much Rotary had done. I learned what they did on an international level, but my thinking as I researched this was at the local and state level. And, you know, what can this club do with local and state governments and nonprofit organizations to promote peace? Now, I know a lot of our work kind of plays into that, but what can we do to promote peace and take action to address causes of conflict that may be present in our own community? And that's my Rotary Minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And now Elizabeth will provide our inspiration for this morning.
I had it all planned out time. So the equinox is this week. Equinox means equal nights, which I hadn't really thought about before. But so in celebration of the change of the seasons, I have a poem. It's called Fall Leaves Fall by Emily Bronte. Fall leaves fall, die flowers away, lengthen night and shorten day. Every leaf speaks bliss to me, fluttering from the autumn tree. I shall smile when wreaths of snow blossom where the rose should grow. I shall sing when night's decay ushers in a drearier day. Happy autumn.
All right, I just have one announcement, and that is that next week we will have a business meeting, and we'll get an agenda out and let the folks know who need to be leading some parts of our discussion next week. Does anyone else have a brief announcement that they need to do?
Just reminding people about the thank you notes that we were to write for the police department.
Yes, if you have signed up to do that, please, get your thank you note to Andy if you haven't already, or let him know that it's on the way. Did you deliver hers this morning? Elizabeth?
So last week I passed around the sign up sheet for the fall festival at Isham and could use some more people on that. I meant to bring it today, but I've had a morning. So for this weekend, if we're going to do it, it would be Sunday, pick up stuff, be there at 12:30 and end at 4:30. So far, I just have Walter and Doug, and nobody signed up to actually pick up the things and drop them off at the storage.
Yeah.
Okay, you can pick up stuff. Still need someone to bring it back. So until we have enough people, I don't want to. The most people we have is for the 8th. The 15th looks pretty good too. I will email the people who signed up and get firm on times for that and stuff, but we might just be doing those 2 weeks if I can't get a few more people for the next 2. So if you want to do the Isham Fall Festival, be in touch.
Thank you.
All right, and now I will turn it over to Jen to introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. It is with delight that I welcome Mary Burns, the president and CEO of Lund, to our meeting. Lund is the over 130-year-old social services organization in this county that serves the entire state. Its adoption agency serves people around the country, and it's very dear to my heart. I was on the board for just over about 30 years, and I still try to stay somewhat affiliated with it. So I always love the opportunity to tell Vermonters about the great work that Lund does and the successes it has. Mary came to Lund just this past year ago, June 1st, it actually was in 2020, as the president and CEO. She has spent over 30 years in Vermont serving children and families throughout the state. Mary's passion for helping those who need help the most is what drives her to live her desire for serving children and families. With over 35 years of YMCA service, she spent most of her career with the Greater Burlington YMCA, with her last position as president and CEO from 2007 to 2015. Lund's mission to help children thrive by empowering families to break cycles of poverty, addiction, and abuse is what drew Mary to Lund. She holds a bachelor's degree in human services from Springfield College and has been active on numerous not-for-profit boards, as well as private and public boards. Mary lives in South Burlington, and it's with pleasure that I asked Mary to come up.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Jen, for inviting me. And I must tell you that I'm a little nervous because she has 30 years of experience at Lund. So to share that I grew up in Burlington and was, grew up at the Y, and always thought that if I ever worked for another nonprofit organization, I'd want to work for Lund. Lund has had such a great reputation, and the services that it provides is phenomenal. 17 different programs. As Jen mentioned, we're across the state of Vermont. We have staff in every single district, Department of Children and Family Services offices across the state doing various things. And when I first started my job at Lund, I only knew about its child care facility and its residential treatment facility for pregnant and parenting women in the state. That also serves, what amazed me about the residential program is that the parents can bring their children up to the age of 5 to live with them while they're in recovery. So the parents are there for about 30 days before the children are allowed to join them. But what's so special about this is, unfortunately, my family has had experience with dealing with folks with substance use issues. And separating the parent from the child during recovery is so traumatic for the child, the parent, but also for the child. And so what I love about our program is that we have wraparound services that you can't imagine. We teach women who've never taken a bus before how to take a bus. We help them bring their children to child care, to pediatric appointments, to mental health services. We teach them how to go grocery shopping and buy nutritional foods. We teach them how to cook those foods. The average length of stay in that program right now is like 8 to 9 months. And that is phenomenal because any other treatment facility in the state of Vermont, you can go for 10 to 14 days. If you're lucky, you can get an extension for another 14 days. And if you've had any experience with folks with an opiate addiction, you know that 10, 14, 20 days is not enough time to be in recovery. So I'm going to plant a little seed here. So if you do any advocacy, we need to change how Medicaid and other insurance pays for people who want to get help because they need more than that short stay period. So that's why Lund's program is so successful. And I will tell you that all of our funding comes from the state of Vermont. So we have grants and contracts with the state. And my job, I think my most important job is to raise dollars for Lund, because without fundraising and closing that gap that we have, because the state cannot pay us what it costs to serve our families, that's what I do. It's an easy story to tell. And so in addition to our residential program, we have a whole other arm of those services that we provide. We have an employee that is working with the Timberlane Pediatric Office in South Burlington. She meets with newborn families with newborns and introduces them to all the services that they may not know about that are available to them. She does not force herself on the families. She'll go in and she'll just say, I'm available if you'd like to talk to me after your appointment. And so 89% of the families with newborns that go into that pediatric office meet with this employee, and she helps them with different services. And what we have found with that, many of them have housing issues. They may be professionals in the community, but they still have housing issues. There's no childcare, so how can we help them find childcare for their children? And so there are many different services that she's providing to support those families, and she stays with them for 6 months throughout their first experience being a parent. Many great stories that we have of her telling us how she's helped families. Very heartwarming stories. And I'm gonna try not to go into telling the stories because I could just tell you stories about the impact that we have. We have another program where we're that we provide in the DCF offices across the state, where we work with the caseworkers at DCF, and if they have a family that are experiencing issues that may put the child in danger, our staff go with a caseworker to those families' homes and ask the person if they would like to talk to us about substance use. Do they think they have a substance use problem? And believe it or not, 79% of the families that we go and talk to, we help get into a recovery program. And then we provide wraparound services with the Department of Children and Families for those children. Sometimes the stories are sad and the children need to be removed from the home. And that's where our adoption program comes into play, because we have staff in partnership with the state of Vermont. It's a program called Project Family, where we place children who the parents have lost their parental rights to their children with families in their forever homes. You know, these are not babies. These are older children. These are children up to the age of 18 that we're helping to find homes for. And last year, this is amazing. This is why I love my job. 311 children. That's almost one child a day we found forever homes for. And so once they're placed, I'm getting goosebumps. This is like even more phenomenal to me. We work with those families for however long they want. So we have staff called post-permanency counselors, so post-adoption counselors who work with those families 3 times a week, 1 time a week, 1 time a month, to provide them support, because these children have faced trauma, most of them from the day that they were born, and they're not easy children. So we're there to support the parents and give them the services that they need to help that child be successful. So hopefully by doing that, we're preventing the next generation of folks who are going to be placing their children in trauma. And so that program is phenomenal. I have to tell you, I had the mayor of Burlington come with his department heads to have their staff meeting at Lund. I had no idea that our mayor in Burlington has 2 children that he adopted through Lund Services. And so what I found really special about that was the confidentiality that we have at Lund. I do not know when a child comes to Lund or a parent comes to Lund that wants to place their children in adoption. I don't know the children that are in DCF custody that are being placed, or the parents that they're being placed with. But I will tell you that wherever I go, I find families who have adopted children and who are so very grateful to Lund for the support that they have had. And the opportunity for them to have a family that they might not have otherwise had. So that's about our, some of the things about our adoption program. And John, if you remember something that I am like totally forgetting, you just let me know. In addition to that, we have what we call recruiters in the adoption department. And so they're helping other kinds of families. Well, children, I should not say children, because we don't find children for families. We find families for children. And so we have children in residential facilities, not just in Vermont, but in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, whose families are from Vermont, that we have staff that go visit these children in those residential facilities while we're trying to find them a home. And one story I will tell you is about this 11-year-old boy. We first had contact with him when he was 7, and from the time he was 7 to 11, he was in a residential facility in New Hampshire. We had a staff member who went and visited him every weekend because he had no family to go visit him. Every single weekend for 4 years, he went and visited this child. 3 months ago, he found a forever family for this child. And so it's amazing that staff are so committed and so dedicated to provide the support to these children to find them forever homes. So there's a lot of happy stories when it comes to our adoption department. The other thing that I would share with you is that, our childcare facility is I worked at the Y. We cared for 1,000 different children every single day. And I took a lot of pride in that. And we served children that had experienced trauma. At Lund, the children that we have in our facility that are experiencing trauma is double the number of children that we would have at a childcare facility at any of the Y programs. And so we have very dedicated staff. We have therapists who come into our facility every day to work one-on-one with children and their families. And I will tell you that they come to visit me because they know I love children. So the staff will bring the children to me. Yesterday, some of them are like very, very loud. But yesterday, the childcare director was walking by my office and she's like being very quiet. And I touched them on my eye and I said, "What are you guys doing?" Because they were whispering. And "We're being quiet. We're looking for people." A little girl who is really very loud and usually cannot sit down. Her name is Leslie. She said, "Mary, can you help us?" And I said, "How do you remember my name?" She goes, "How can anyone forget?" She's 3 years old. And so I walked out with them and we were quiet and we found the paper. But that, I was just thinking, she's been with us like 6 months. And the difference from her walking and running and screaming down the hallway to walking quietly and whispering and remembering my nickname made me feel really good, is just an example of the time and energy and the care that our staff pay to those children. So there's a, when we think about Lund, sometimes we're not thinking about prevention, but a lot of the work that we do is prevention. And so, I have met so many people who have been through the residential program. One is actually a state legislator who advocated for the Y to receive some extra funding because we were short-staffed, and if we can't serve the number of clients that we need to serve, you don't get paid for them, but we still have to pay our staff. So we did some advocacy, and this woman was sitting on the Health and Human Services Committee. And she shared, and I didn't even know her, but I was watching the YouTube video of the session. She shared that she was a graduate of Lund. She was there when she was like, I don't know, 17 years old. Now she has another child. She's a legislator. She's got her life together. She called me after that and she said, I just want to tell you my backstory. And she went through years of trauma and years of substance use. And so, if anything that you can remember, and I know I've already said this, there's so many people, you don't wake up one day and say, I want to be stressed. That's not how it happens. And there are so many people who need more than that 14-day and that 20-day or that 30-day assistance. They need more than that because they get the assistance and then some of them have no homes. And so they want help, but there's not the support that we need to provide folks to get that help. Back in the day when we had Maple Leaf Farm and Underhill, that was a 30-day treatment program. But I do know, because I was on the board for years there, that we found people homes, and right now, because of the housing issue, we have a hard time finding our folks homes. And so we're working really hard with housing agencies across the state because we serve parents from across the state to find homes. And so I don't know. I think if anything that you can do for Lund is to share all of the great work that we're doing and do a little bit of advocacy, even if it's in a conversation with your friends or here at Rotary about, all the services that Lund provide. And, you have, Jean can give you my number. I'm willing to do anything for any person to help them find what they need, even if it's not available at Lund, if it's in any of those other areas. I know I'm forgetting to talk to you about a lot of things, but Lund's budget is $10 million. And a very small amount of that is the money that we raise from donations. But having said that, I will say to you that we're able to right now continue to provide for our staff, provide for our families, provide for our clients. And we do have supporters like Jean out in the community who will never forget about Lund and continue to help us. And so the only thing I would ask that you do is just to tell a little bit of what I told you today about the services and the successes that we have, especially if you know families in need, let them know that we're available. And if any of you would ever like to volunteer, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. We have this holiday drive that we're calling, my office is on Joy Drive in South Burlington, and we're calling it the Joy Drive Holiday Gift Drive. Joy. There's joy in the holiday season. And I can't even tell you how many families, it's hundreds of families across the state of Vermont that we get gifts for, and we just send them out. So our staff have connections with families in those communities. It's amazing. I don't even know how we're going to take all the gifts this year, but we do it. And so if you'd like to help with that, you could get gifts. You could help us wrap the gifts. We have families from our residential facility who come in and shop for their children so that they can have a holiday at our facility. We have for instance, it's probably too late for this year, but we have an adoption picnic coming up. That's gonna be held at the Champlain Valley Exposition Fairgrounds on October 15th. Bring your children because there's a whole bunch of fun activities and all those bouncy things that are gonna be there. You can come and eat. You don't need to pay for anything because we have support to provide this. And it's just a celebration for all the families in the state that have supported Lund and we've supported them and their families. And so we always have need for volunteers at that event. The other thing that you can do, and of course I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you this, is you can write us a check. It could be or whatever you do, Venmo or Apple or whatever. I'm telling you my age now, that you can get to Lund would be a support for the children and families that we serve. And I don't know if it's been 5 minutes. Or 10
You are
minutes.
doing great on time, so you've got a little bit more before questions. Touch on the affiliation with corrections.
Oh, thank you very much. So just yesterday, we had some new board members and we had a tour at our program at the Women's Correctional Facility in South Burlington. It's the only facility in the state that houses women who need to be incarcerated. Lund's program there is called Kids Apart. And so we have staff in the facility with phenomenal space that looks like a childcare facility or your family living room, where our staff help children visit with their incarcerated parent. Not just visit, but we teach the parent who's been separated from that child for sometimes for a very long period of time because they also had a substance use issue. But we teach them parenting skills. We teach them how to play with the children. It's the only place in the facility where imagine 99% of the people who are in that facility have substance use problems, and that's why they're there. So imagine going into that facility with your child, and this is how it used to be, and you have this plastic thing in front of you, and your mom is here, and you're there with who knows, holding you on the lap. The child can't touch the mom. And in our program now, the children can be with the mother. They can touch each other. It's just incredible work that we do. And not only do they work with the mom, but the caregivers. And so they teach the caregivers how to speak to the child about why mom is incarcerated and what that means. And they go into the schools and they talk to the school counselors and teachers about, you may have children here whose parents are incarcerated, and they'll say, no, I don't. But then we can tell them, yes, you do. And so here's how we can help support you in your work and working with these children. Just imagine not having a parent. And so what we're trying to do with this program is to move it to the men's correctional facilities, because children's want to see their dads too. They want that relationship. Did I do that?
You did it,
Sir.
sir.
I mean, if you would ever like to tour that program or even volunteer at that program, just let me know. So there's another volunteer opportunity. We also have board opportunities. So if you're interested in, after you hear today, that you would like to be on the Lund board, you can let me know and I could pass your name on to our governance committee. What else?
Mention the two facilities, please, so that they don't know. That we got the separation.
Gosh, she's here. So we have a facility on Joy Drive, which is where the administrative offices are. We have outpatient counseling. I didn't tell you about that. So we're just opening that to the community. So if you know folks who need to see a family therapist or anyone to deal with substance use, we do have outpatient counseling, and we do have openings, so we can refer them to Lund. So we have the facility there where we have counseling. We have the childcare facility located on Joy Drive, and then the residential facility is on Glen Road in South Burlington, which is right behind the Hickok and Boardman building on Shelburne Road. So we're in a neighborhood, and that facility, and where Hickok and Boardman is now, is the original location of
Yeah.
Lund, which opened in 1890 and was called the Home for Friendless Women.
Yes.
And so these were young women who, you know, were pregnant and were shunned from society back in the day. The story that impacted me the most during my interview was they used to have a basket with gold rings sitting by the door. So if any of the young women needed to leave, they had to wear a wedding band out so that no one would know that they were pregnant and were not married. And so that program was started by Elizabeth Lund. Her husband was an obstetrician, so he worked there as well. And so that's how Lund got its start. So we're still supporting women who have young children in recovery. Only they're not shunned. We don't judge. And we live our core values. And yeah, thank you. And so anyway, I don't know what else to say.
I
So
think you can open it up to
questions.
questions.
I have a comment. About 26 years ago, my niece got pregnant and she was young. She was like 14. And London was a huge part in getting her child adopted. And over the last 15 years, that child got in touch with my sister, who was the mother of the girl that got pregnant.
Mhm.
This girl has graduated from Cornell, this child. And she was placed in an adoptive family, and she is just a phenomenal part of our family now.
That's great.
Really good
Great
story, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a former foster kid, down in South Florida, so thanks. It's called DCF down there too.
Yeah.
But I imagine Vermont might be a little bit warmer and wonderful. But I went into foster care at 15, my sophomore year of high school, so relatively late, already knew who I was as a person. And it was, helpful to have had a better than average public education down there and stuff. But I just wanted to say thanks for doing what you do. And, as the son of a single mom who definitely needed a lot of resources that weren't available, how to cook food, for instance. She and my dad were 17 and 18 when they had us. And, it's important work. And as substance use is more and more of a problem, and the substances used are more and more lethal and long-term, it's really important that you have that longer stay available. Do you guys have a wait list for services?
Yes, we do have a wait list. My vision, my dream in, this is being recorded, so I don't know if I should say it out loud, but I was there 2 weeks and I thought this program needs to be in every corner of the state of Vermont. It shouldn't just be in Chittenden County. And so as we move forward, one of my goals is, one at a time, let's place a residential facility for more people in more corners of the state of Vermont, because there's such a need. And when I talk about that length of stay, it's kind of, overwhelming, because it's the insurance companies who, and the federal government, who mandates how long that can happen. And so I think the more that, we can all talk about it and shout about it, the more they hear that this is really not okay, and that, people don't wake up today and say, I want to be a drug addict and I don't want to be a good parent or a good citizen. That's not how it happens.
I'm thinking how when we have the Williston chief of police here, and we're talking about the crime and all the increase in theft in our stores, and attributing a lot of that to drug use. So, and I find myself wondering, like, what can we do about it? Like, obviously, a drug program, if there's one out there, it needs to get expanded. Like, we need to have more options available to people, because like you said, they don't want to be doing what they're doing, but they're doing it to survive. They're stealing stuff to sell it so that they can feed their habit. stay alive, you know, but
Mhm.
that cycle has to get broken, and that sounds like what you guys are helping.
We're
to do.
trying to help do that.
I mean, you can continue to answer
No,
that question.
no, I was just gonna say, we're trying, it's, I almost said, it's more than just treatment and prevention, it's more police. It's more housing, I mean, it's, the state of Vermont too, I just wanna share this, is in a state of flux. They don't have staff. And so one staff that work with the project family and the children in DCF and our caseworkers who are going into homes with people, our staff are working 24/7 because the state of Vermont doesn't have staff to reach out to families. And so, and they're as stressed as everybody else is about the situation. So something's gonna break and something's gonna give, and we're gonna turn Vermont back around where it's one of the safest places in the United States and the healthiest to live.
So several years ago, I was a special ed teacher and I was up in Richford, which is a pretty rough area. And all the kids in my group had incarcerated parents. And as a special ed teacher, I was like 22 at the time. I was brand new. I didn't know what to do with that. So I was just wondering if there's like connection with your organization and the schools and the special ed teachers who are trying to manage those kids while they're in school and in foster care in that situation.
Well, I just learned yesterday because one of the board members asked a similar question like that. And that's when I learned that our staff do go out to the schools to provide trainings. What I also learned though, is that some of the schools said we don't have parents who are incarcerated. And so I think what I'm going to go back and share is, let's get in touch with the special education teachers at those schools, because sometimes the school principals or the superintendents are not as aware of what's happening. And I don't know if there's any principals or superintendents here, so I
I'm Greg. We have a clinician who's provided by Howard that we contract with, who is a fantastic conduit to resources and tends to try to have finger on the pulse in terms of in collaboration with our school counselors. But yeah, there are some, I'm sure there are blind spots that we have, or folks who don't want to let them, or, make us aware. But our school-based clinician who works for Howard has been a conduit to Lund and other organizations.
I'm sure she's aware, but you could say, hey, do you know about the Kids Apart program? Out loud?
Yes, I will ask her.
Because we're there. I mean, we can come out and, have a conversation with your staff if you'd like.
Yeah, great, tk you.
You're welcome.
Could you talk for a minute? I know, there was quite an issue, politically with like building a new women's prison or not. Could you talk about the impact that the, circumstances those women are living in has on their relationship with their kids and how much they're able to be present when they do go and,
That's a great question, because that facility was not built actually as a correctional facility. It was built as a detention facility, and it is in bad repair. And so the state is moving forward with it. I don't know where they are in that process, but Lund is at the table to help design the area, just like the one in this facility, at that facility. So I know that it's still in process. I just don't know how long this is gonna take. Years. Yeah, years. Sadly, state government.
Yeah.
Any state government folks.
When I was young, Lund was the home for unwed mothers.
Yeah.
And to me, it's a great tribute to the leaders of that organization that they have expanded and improved their program because of the change in the way that society treats unwed mothers these days. They now have another more important job to do. Thank you so much for expanding your mind and continuing to serve our community.
Right, you're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Phil. Any more questions?
what's the status on you've talked about dads as well. And so, we talked about, like father specific services.
Well, I've been thinking about that and speaking with our director of the residential community treatment services, and we just, I'm proud to say that we're one nonprofit organization who never closed because we didn't have staff. who shortened our hours because we didn't have staff. And we're staffed. And so we're now primed, I think, after being there for a while myself and building changing a culture that was really sad when I got there, to start working with our corrections person who's new, I think has only been here a couple of years, who's pretty young, and I think who's raring to go, and he just might want to have a feather in his cap, so to speak. So we're gonna be reaching out to him and talking to him about taking this program or training, and not taking this program, but training other people to provide this program in all the correctional facilities. So it doesn't have to be, it's not, I should say this is not about Lund. It's about the people that we serve and how we can collaborate with others to serve even more.
You do also have counseling for fathers anyway.
Yes, we do. Yeah, so we do provide services to the father families who are in our program. Or if that father may be a distant father, we do reach out and try to involve them in process.
You said the word distant, and it reminded me that I found out that Vermont actually, because of the lack of correctional capacity in Vermont, we actually export some of our people who are arrested, and even juveniles to other states, including way down south, to private for-profit prisons, because of the lack of, state-of-the-art facilities here or any facility at all. What does that end up happening with parents who are, like the kids are in Vermont and then the parents are down in Alabama?
It certainly does, and that's something that we haven't been able to figure out how to help those folks. One thing I did learn, and I'll share this with you before I end, is that in the state of Vermont, when someone has, commits a crime, they could get 6 months to 2 years. And so they can leave in 6 months. But they leave and they have nowhere to go. And so then they're on furlough. And so if they don't keep an appointment with their parole officer, or if they don't, I don't know, there are so many different things, look for housing, find a job in a certain amount of time, they get sent back to jail. And so other states say, okay, you're gonna get a year, or you're gonna get 2 years, and that's how long they're there. And then they don't have to keep going back and being, I don't know, just the way it was being explained to me yesterday with the women, it was just incredible. I thought, how can somebody go in there for 6 months and start feeling good, and they get out, but they really have no place to go and no supports, and they missed an appointment, or they can't find a job, or they didn't go to an NA or AA meeting, get their sheet signed because they were sick, and that nobody cares because they have to go right back because they were, it just does not make sense. Thank you. Very
One little task for you.
Tell Mary what she.
Oh, yeah,
Yes. Okay, the lucky winner.
Yes, the last 3 digits.
Okay, glasses. 450.
Say that again?
450.
Oh.
And I want to thank Mary for bringing us that information. It is a wonderful organization. As I said, I was on the board 30 years. I think they're delighted when I got off, because they have probably now changed the bylaws so that you can't be on for 30 years. I don't know. She could stand here and talk about Lund forever, and the evolution of the program from just this. As Phil and I know, growing up in another part of the state, we used to hear about a girl going to the Lizzie Lund home. That's what we called it. The evolution is really amazing. It's been through a lot of changes and has adapted to the needs in our society. So I'm delighted to have Mary here. And in honor of you, our Rotary gives a contribution to the Williston Schools Mentoring Program.
Oh,
to speak to us. So thank you very much.
So my son was in the Williston School District for 3 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Great experience.
Did you say your son?
Yeah, many, many